living La Vida Low-Carb. This show is changing lives. We talking about your diet, trying to get you feeling right. Cut up them avocados, fry some eggs, time to explore the longest running health podcast, hosted by Jimmy Moore. Time to give up the crappy garbage, we're getting into ketosis. Every day is a new step to your goal, yeah, you're getting closer. Motivated and focused, don't stop, just go. Time to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low-Carb Show. Hey, the LLVLC.com.
So guys, that right there is Dr. Elie Jarrouge. Now tell me, please, that I said that correctly.
I go by Eli or Elie.
Eli?
Yeah, Eli is better. Let's go by Eli.
And the last name?
Jarrouge, you got that.
Okay, so I got Dr. Jarrouge right. So I will call you Eli. That's easier than Ellie or whatever. So Dr. Elie Jarrouge, he is over on Instagram, Eli_Jarrouge. That's spelled ELIE_JARROUGE. He is a doctor, a real doctor, a medical doctor. Sometimes people put doctor in front of their name and you're like, are they a doctor or are they another kind of doctor? You're a doctor. And a health coach. You have helped people overcome their obesity and their diabetes using what you stole this phrase from Dr. Berry, the proper human diet. And so the low-carb diet is the proper human diet, and you consult with people. MetabolicHealthMD.com, you guys, if you want to go hire him. He's out of the Houston, Texas area. But welcome, man. I've been following you for a little bit. I just started seeing bits and pieces of your work, and I'm like, whoa, how do I not know this guy?
Yeah, I've heard of you, and I've known when I first started 5 years ago. You were one of the first, like the pioneers to it. You were in the low carb and keto area, so you've always been an icon for in this field.
Thank you, and I'm honored to be joined alongside by people like yourself now. So tell us your story. Did you have issues with obesity, diabetes, or other kind of chronic health issues that led you down the path to finding low carb?
Yeah, so I was healthy growing up, and when I went to medical school, wanting to be a doctor to help other people. But during the training process of years, just focus on training, I was basically ignoring my health, eating junk food all the time, not exercising, just not taking care of myself. And over a span of 8 years, I gained about 35 pounds. My waist grew 4 inches. I wasn't obviously obese, but I became overweight. I developed high blood pressure, and I developed insulin resistance, kind of a pre-diabetes type state.
You were TOFI. You were the thin outside, fat inside.
Right. Yeah. I wasn't so thin after a while. So we went from a waist 32 to 36. So I kept kind of, not fitting in my clothes. And then towards the end, 5-6 years ago, I kept having back pain. I had chronic back pain. Then I started throwing out my back, where anytime I try to exercise, play tennis, do anything, really my back gives out and I'm out of commission for weeks. And I didn't connect the dots. But eventually, after several episodes where we were sleeping on the floor and just not feeling great, decided to dive into health and see, hey, what do I have to lose? Because I went to doctors, physical therapists, got images of my back. There was nothing structurally wrong. They just tell me I'm out of shape or whatever. So I just started doing at that time the Whole30 program. Before I knew about it. Yeah, it's the hard way. Yeah. So I read the book. I was like, all right, what do I have to lose? It makes sense. Let me try. So within a month, I lost 10 pounds the first time, and my back was like 60-70% better. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I extended it another month, and my back was 80% better. I had a lot of energy, and I lost 20 pounds. Then I kind of, like any human being, stopped doing it, thinking, hey, I feel better. And then my back pain came back, and I started having the same issues again. At that time, I went back to doing kind of generally paleo. Then I heard about keto, and I was initially very scared of it because being a doctor, they tell you like fat, saturated fat, heart disease, all that stuff. So, but the more I read and listened to podcasts and read books and things like that, I became more confident, and then I wanted to try it myself before I even tell anybody to do it. So I went keto for 3 months. That was 2018, and I lost another 10 pounds. It was like completely 30 pounds later, and my back was 100% better. So it's like light bulb went on in my head, and I was like, I cannot practice medicine the same way anymore,
Yeah.
because we just throw pills at people and do surgeries and manage chronic issues, but we never really fix anything. Because working in the hospital, I see people the sickest, so they're like already have severe complications, and most of them have chronic disease and complications of that. So this is when I started shifting in my mindset from conventional to starting to focus on nutrition.
Yes, I've had some emergency medicine doctors on here before talking about how their eyes were to, oh my gosh, look at all the people coming in. They got chest pain related to diet and metabolic health. You know, other than the car accidents where they get
Right,
scrapes on their body or cuts or broken bones, all the other things that they come in for, like lightheadedness or whatever, usually come back to some kind of metabolic issue that's related to the food they're eating. But then you tell me if this is true about your medical school training, you're not learning a lot about food and its impact on the body. You're not really learning how to the proper human diet. And if you're getting any nutrition advice at all, it's probably more of like the USDA dietary guidelines and pushing that along with medication to try to control obesity, diabetes, and all the rest. Is that true?
right. Very true. Like, we really get no nutrition education. Whatever nutrition education we got, it was more, the guidelines, that the food pyramid or calories. It's about calories, and we talk about obesity in general, but nothing really specific. And dietitians are, they learn a lot, but at the same time, the focus is not the same thing. There's no focus on the quality of the food, what the food does. It's more
Yeah.
about just energy balance, and that's been, causing a lot of problem, unfortunately, in the world. So
You know what's disappointing about that is I kind of know some of the behind the scenes stuff when it comes to the guidelines. When they get pitched a study to support what people should be eating, if it's got anything to do with weight loss or dealing with a chronic disease like type 2 diabetes or heart disease, they throw it out. They say, no, the
yep,
dietary guidelines are not meant to be therapeutic for a disease. They're meant to be generally healthy guidelines. So they're throwing out almost all the keto studies because almost all the keto studies show a benefit in all those areas from obesity down to chronic disease. And so that's frustrating because you trust doctors, lay people, patients go to doctors. We think you're the purveyors of everything about health. And unfortunately, unless you taught yourself on your own like you have, you
right.
don't have that information.
Absolutely. And as a doctor, or when I was in training, you don't doubt guidelines. You can't even imagine why would they teach you something wrong. So you just take guidelines face value until you start looking at the evidence behind it, and then realize how political this whole system is, and it's really not based on a lot of science. And especially when you look at funding and who puts out the guidelines, who supports it. So there's, unfortunately, people are well-meaning, but kind of interest gets in the way, and then you can't change something that's way more political than it should be.
Well, and then the jaded side of me and many others in this community is, well, look, they're trying to keep us sick. They feed us a diet that's inferior, full of carbohydrates. Then the answer is medical procedures and medications that are prescriptions that if you just changed your diet, you wouldn't need. Looking at you, statin. And like, there's so many things that we do so stupidly that if it really was about patient health, we wouldn't have the need for so many hospitals. We wouldn't have a
No,
need for many doctors. Look, I want a few of you MDs that if I break this arm, you put it back together. You're very good at that. But metabolic health and insulin resistance and chronic disease, they don't know a damn thing about how to prevent it and to, I guess, reverse it.
yeah. And my message today on Instagram was, in the body of the caption, it talked about that. Basically, if you remove the chronic diseases, if you, and I guess, a rough estimate, more than 70% of people are either overweight, obese, have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. So, and everything I see in the hospital are complications of that, whether it's sleep apnea or bariatric surgery complications or stroke, heart attacks, kidney failure, liver cirrhosis, all this related to these metabolic issues. So if you don't have diabetes and obesity, you prevent a lot of downstream of that. And yes, the healthcare system will collapse economically because you don't need all these doctors and hospitals and procedures. But hospitals, they want business. They don't want people sick, obviously, but they're excited when there's a big heart surgery or heart transplant surgery, yes, or because it's big bucks for them, and it keeps them afloat. And that felt very wrong for me to be excited that, hey, we're number one or number two, whatever, transplant center. That we should be sad that this is the case. We should be preventing things, but it's not exciting. It doesn't make the news and doesn't make money to prevent diseases. But think of big pharma. An average person with diabetes have like 2-3 pills and blood pressure pills because they coexist, and then cholesterol pills, and then complications, side effects of these medications are treated with more medications. So I've seen it all. As we call it polypharmacy. People come in with 10 medications. You can't fix it. I couldn't fix it in the hospital. I can tell them, hey, it's lifestyle, but when they're sick and dying, the last thing they want to hear is what to do if you're eating wrong. And the hospital food is not, don't get me started there. So
that's another podcast or another day. So, I've had different cardiologists on, William Davis, who wrote the Wheat Belly line of books, and I've had Dr. Dwight Lundell, very famous heart surgeon as well, and both of them gave up doing heart surgeries because they were like, oh, yeah, the pharmaceutical companies, they would come in, they would wine and dine us and take us on trips and give us honorariums, and literally all we had to do was keep pushing the statin medications and keep pushing the drug and the procedures so the hospitals could make money. I don't think most patients realize, and look, they're a business. Yeah. They see hospitals less as a business and more as that's where I go when I'm sick and I'm hurt. But it's a business at the end of the day, and they run it like a business, and you're the product, patient.
Yeah. It's not in their advantage to have people come off medication. I'm not saying these medications are bad. A lot of people need them necessarily. It's very important and life-saving, especially early on. If you have like raging diabetes, you do want to manage it with pills. But any cure, pills are supposed to be a treatment. You have pneumonia, you take an antibiotic for a few days, you're healed, you're done. You get injured, same thing. But this kind of indefinite use of medications, that just doesn't make any sense. That means you're not treating anything, you're just managing symptoms. These companies, they report to their shareholders, not to the patient, so they need profit.
Yes, and if you look at this ancestrally, like we didn't have a statin drug deficiency, we didn't have a metformin deficiency. We didn't have all these drugs back in the day, and yet they somehow were able to survive. Now, they had less chronic disease than we do today. So what has changed since those times where they had less chronic disease to today? And it's obvious to anybody that's paying attention. I've been shouting it from the mountaintop for nearly 2 decades now. It's the carbs.
Yeah, people like to blame genetics because diseases tend to run in families. They blame poor activity. People rationalize a lot of things. They probably, and it's not true because genes didn't change, and what changed is the food. And even with carbs, people fight back. Hey, but they're healthy carbs, and yes, there are natural carbs, but it's not the carbs we're talking about. I'm not talking about blueberries and carrots. It's more about the processed, highly refined, ultra processed food that really wrecks. Our genetics are not meant to handle this kind of insult. But you're right.
Did you go keto and thought you had to give up wine? Well, let me introduce you to Dry Farm Wines. It is the world's first sugar-free alcohol that is lower than your typical wines, organic, made at local farms that do it the right way. Most of the wines that you buy are from 3 really big companies, loaded with additives and preservatives, so many dozens of those kinds of things. You don't want all that junk in your wine. So go to dryfarmwines.com/Jimmy and they will ship you these wines. And just because you listen to this podcast, Dry Farm Wines is going to give you a bottle in your first order for just 1 cent. Go to dryfarmwines.com/Jimmy and you will get your bottle of wine for just one singular penny. Go check them out. Dry Farm Wines, you guys. It's wine o'clock somewhere. Let's go get some wine. Yeah, and it's a sad state of affairs because people, they're too trusting. And I hate that I'm so freaking jaded, Eli, because I have like gone to doctors. I actually had to fire my doctor locally. He would not run a fasting insulin test on me. Now I have obesity on my body, no chronic diseases other than insulin resistance. But I want to keep an eye on the fasting insulin because I think
Yeah.
that's an important marker as I'm working on my health, doing all these biohacks, eating mostly carnivore, all the things. He refused to run it, and I'm like, I'll pay out of pocket. It's like $50, even at full price. I'll pay out of
It's
pocket.
cheaper. It's $25 if you go to the direct to consumer labs. I mean, there are ways
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. So that's how I do it now. I do go to like private
Walk
MD
in.
labs, any lab tests now. There's all those kind of things out there now. But he refused to run it. And I was shocked. I was like, sorry, you can't be my doctor anymore if you won't even get what I need that I want to run. He's like, we don't have type 2 diabetes. I'm like, yeah, and I try to keep it that way.
Unfortunately, most doctors don't even know what it means, what insulin level means. And when you look at the normal range of insulin level, the upper limit of normal is ridiculously high, and it falls within normal where it's really bad. Like for instance, I think upper normal says 19, which that's really
Whoa.
high. It is really high, and it still falls.
Whoa.
So, and I tell people, I mean, we
Just,
don't need to talk about numbers, but hey, you need to be way lower than that to be
yeah.
normal insulin level.
Definitely under 10 in the insulin and optimally get it under 5.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. 19 is considered normal.
Yeah, it's like when you
Yikes.
look at the range, it says 4 or 2 to 19, 20. It's crazy
Whoa.
because they take averages. I mean, normal range is nothing but average of a population. Same thing happened with liver numbers, say AST, ALT, which is liver numbers. Over the years, the average shifted up because people got more fatty liver. So the bell curve shifted, and then people now fall within normal range when it's abnormal. So you just have to know what you're looking at. And a lot of doctors really, they mean well, but really they don't know, and
No.
because there is no pill for that either, so you just wait until you have diabetes and you start treating with pills. So
Do you sense that there is a revolution happening in traditional allopathic care, which is what you're in, where there's hybrid doctors like yourself now that kind of go, hey, I can bring my medical knowledge, which has a lot of moxie to it, but then also bring in kind of more of a holistic approach, nutritional approach that's not been there before. Is there a merging of this? And we're seeing functional medicine doctors pop up. We're seeing nutritional therapists and other nutrition experts. It
yeah,
seems to me that the future of medicine, Eli, is going to be those doctors that can take the best of westernized allopathic medicine and the best of nutritional health and marry them into this thing that will actually help their patients.
absolutely, I see it. I mean, even in the past 2 years that I've been doing this, I see a huge shift. It feels like we're on a pivotal moment where more and more doctors, one, they're getting burned out from the conventional stuff with COVID happening, all that stuff. People are quitting. I quit because many reasons we can get into it, but that was one of the reasons, because I wasn't helping anybody, and it's just more bureaucracy and paperwork, and nobody's getting healthier. So there's a huge shift. Social media is helping. It's accessible. With everybody now working remotely, you can reach a lot of people and help them. And what I've been doing, and it's been so much more rewarding than trying to fix a barrel with multiple band-aids, when it has
Yes.
a million holes,
Dude, I think the model that you've set up, and for those of you that came in late, this is Dr. Elie Jarrouge. There he is on Instagram. And yeah, you call yourself health coach. And look, I feel like those doctors that are frustrated, and I do want to ask you all the reasons why you left here in a minute, but those doctors that feel frustrated by the system, get out of the system and go actually help people. And yeah, maybe you can't offer the medical advice in the traditional way that you would in a hospital. You can actually give them educated advice. Like I hired a life coach that was also a licensed therapist. She wasn't
Yep.
allowed to do therapy outside of her state, but she was able to be a life coach and offer her knowledge and experience as a therapist. And it was wonderful, and it helped me immensely. And I see the same thing with you, that here you are, a medical doctor, and all the training and all the experience. How long were you in the hospital setting before
Uh,
you?
9 years after training. So I went to
So
medical
almost.
school in 2008. I mean, 2004, 2008. So, and training and all that stuff. And then from 2013 until, December, I was in the hospital working as a hospitalist.
Yeah, and you did your residency, so over a decade worth
Oh,
of
yeah.
experience in that setting, well over a decade. And so, yeah, so you bring that to the table along with this newfound knowledge that, hey, I've got an answer that my profession has not taught me to teach, but I can teach it now. That's beautiful, man. I really love it. Again, the website, metabolichealthmd.com, if you want to reach out to Dr. Jarrouge. But yeah, get into more of the reasons. What were more of those reasons besides the burnout over the Black Plague? I'll use code words because I will get banned.
uh,
Um,
so,
but what
yeah.
what else?
Yeah, I as I improved my own health, I as a hospitalist, my time is more flexible. I have this panel of patients that I have 12 hours to see, so I'm not like a 10-minute appointment. So I have time. So a lot of times I would go back to patients' rooms and talk to them about lifestyle and nutrition, especially the ones you think they're receptive, especially focused on diabetes and obesity. But there was a couple of incidents, one particular one, this lady, she had fatty liver disease and developing cirrhosis. So she was getting worked up to get a liver transplant. So imagine that. Somebody who was eating poorly, got obese, got fatty liver, the liver started failing, and the treatment is put a new liver instead of changing the diet.
Yeah.
We had a good rapport, and I told her, look, whatever, you need to stop sugar. And I know fructose, particularly, and sugar and all this stuff is really toxic to the liver. Her and her husband, I told them they need to quit sugar and a lot of the refined carbohydrates if they want to avoid transplant, which they were interested in that. And they took it to heart, and then they just went extremely low carb. And within a few months, I checked in on them later. Her liver went back to normal. She was not on transplant list anymore. And that was like a light bulb. The power of word. If you build rapport, people trust you, and they follow this advice. It didn't cost anything. They just ate differently and saved years of medications and complications.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's where it started, and other people will started, and then I started advising more people as I became more confident, but I couldn't be very open about it because,
Yeah.
conventional medicine is different.
And let me go there. Let me go there for a second, Eli, because I have several medical friends. I've interviewed many on my podcast, but even people that are personal friends of mine that are in the medical system, either as nurses, PAs, MDs, you name it, across the board. And they're the same way. They're like, you almost have to do it on the down low. Because if the hospital catches wind that you're sharing that kind of information, you get written up, a strike, and all these things happen to you. They don't want you telling them the truth, and it's so sad.
It's very sad. I mean, I haven't had to deal with that, and I have friendly conversations with dietitians. I mean, I'm not confrontational, so for the most part, I mean, I did fine. I wasn't saying anything bad. When you tell people stop eating junk food, nobody will disagree with that. So
Right.
it's how you word. Luckily, I didn't have to get into some controversial conversation. It wasn't for the hospital anyway, so I stayed out of that. But you can influence a lot of people, whoever is interested. But yeah, some people got in trouble for having dietary advice.
And to me, that's unfortunate because you don't get in trouble for putting them on a medication that may or may not help them, but you'll get in trouble for telling them eat real food. That
Yep,
doesn't make sense to
unfortunately. Does not.
me. The state of healthcare in America, it is frustrating. And I've been out here, like I said, almost 2 decades shouting it from the mountaintops of at least give credence to nutrition. Why don't you think, other than the monetary, and this is the way we have always done things, what do you think the roadblocks are to this being more readily accepted?
Well, everybody has to. I mean, a lot of people also don't take responsibility. So I blame the healthcare system, but at the end of the day, knowledge is accessible to everybody. We all know, everybody knows when they eat bad food, it's not healthy for them. But a lot of these, food addiction is a big issue for a lot of people. Convenience, really everybody's busy and stressed, and cost and all that stuff. There's a lot of reasons why people don't eat healthy. But I find emotional eating is a big factor. Sometimes people have financial time restraints, and also being bombarded and lack of knowledge. Some people don't even know. They trust, oh, the doctor told them avoid meat or don't eat fat, so they eat canola oil and boxed cereal. I mean, and they think they're doing the right thing, and they wonder why their health is worse, and they feel that it's their fault. So there's a lot to that. And that's what made me just become more of a coach, to help people change these mindsets, which takes a lot of repetitive, repeating the same stuff to have them really get it. And they have to experience it themselves to know.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many like lies that have been put out there. I don't believe anything from like health experts anymore. And of course, the past 2 years has kind of shown a light on a lot of things, but they were doing it long before then. They were telling us saturated fats clogging your arteries and giving you a heart attack, or if you eat red meat, that's going to lead to cancer and all cause mortality. And it's just like, none of it's true. It's all based on these observational studies and correlations, but nothing that's causal directly that they've proven in a randomized control clinical trial. That's the frustrating part, is people are so driven by headlines and by what studies supposedly say, never mind quality of studies. And it gets so confusing for the consumer, which is, by the way, why I still have a job, because I get to explain all this stuff. And you too, you're very good at explaining it with your little Twitter post that then you post everywhere. So I love the way you do these pithy education pieces. But how do we penetrate that with the culture? How do we get the average everyday person to pay attention to people like you and me and not listen to all the noise?
It's hard. I mean, fear sells, and that's what they've been doing. When people are fearful, they just want to trust whatever authority is telling them, and that's been the case. Despite all what's happened in the past 2 years, people are still living in paranoia and fear, and then there's always more of that. So I don't know what the answer is, except people have to start questioning things. Question me too. I mean, I could be
Yes.
saying something wrong, and you have to do your own self-experimentation. If you're in poor health and you're following the advice and you're still in poor health, it's not you, it's probably the advice. So try something different, and try. I mean, what do you have to lose? If nothing is bad is gonna happen if you stop drinking soda or juice and eat real food. You don't have to go extreme. You don't have to go carnivore or keto or anything like that. Just eat real food, and you'll notice a big difference. I don't know. I mean, the message is getting out there, and you can tell there's more engagement online. There's, gaining followers and all that stuff. People are starting to look for the answer.
Well, as long as I've been online, I look at all the major food trends that have had best-selling books. And it started with the Atkins diet for me, but then it was primal, it was paleo, it was whole 30 heart rate.
Right.
You were talking, it was keto, and it's carnivore, and it's real food focused, and like an anti-wheat and anti-sugar. Like, we've seen some of the biggest selling books are all about the principles that you and I now talk about. So whether they intended to or not, I think the indirect consequence of them not talking about what really works is people have become seekers. And I think the Black Plague has now made a lot of people become a whole lot more seeking of people like you. So I really hope people go to metabolichealthmd.com and really check you out, because you sound like you know what you're talking about, and you do. Like, that's the thing. It's like you're not putting on a show. You're not trying to hide behind, well, I've got a secret agenda. No, your secret agenda is, I want you to be metabolically well.
Yeah. The main push for me during the past 2 years, during the lockdown, I mean, I was taking care of these patients in the hospital, and I was seeing most of the people who end up in the ICU or dying were significantly overweight or have diabetes, the vast majority. Yes, the older you can't change your age, but most people, young and old, had chronic diseases. And that was more of a push for me. It's like, I cannot just sit, and do nothing. So while in the lockdown, this is how I started coaching. I started doing it as a side thing, just kind of, let's put the message out there, started tweeting, and people getting interested, and slowly pivoted away from the hospital because, I mean, I knew the advice wasn't gonna get out there for people to eat better, even when they're dying. So
A lot of people ask me, Jimmy, how do you get such good deep sleep? Well, there's a lot of things that I do, but one of the newest things that I recently added is this upgraded magnesium from a company called Upgraded Formulas. Go to their website, upgradedformulas.com, and you can learn all about this nano technology that they use for this particular mineral of magnesium. Again, it's called Upgraded Magnesium, and it's got all the different forms of magnesium in it using the nanotechnology, so it gets absorbed a lot better. Guys, I have seen my deep sleep improve by as much as 30 to 40% simply by adding in this product along with sunshine exposure, darkness in the room, cooler temperature, all of the things that I always have done. So again, upgradedformulas.com is the website. Go check them out. Well, and everybody was so stressed at the beginning of this. I remember all the news stories that talked about, oh, record sales for junk food. I'm like, yeah, because you just scared the crap out of them. And some people put on a few pounds, and some people put on a lot of pounds. And it'll be pounds that won't go away for years because the stress is still there till you deal with the stress and you deal with the trauma that's taken place. Like those things matter.
yeah, and when we were working on the front line and companies want to help and provide food, what they brought us was donuts
Don't
and cookies and bad food. So I mean, I didn't say anything, but he's like, because it's nice of them, but what are we doing? Oh, it's just making it worse
And
for
then the
people,
incentive to get the hokey pokey, as I call it, was a couple of donuts. And I'm like, what? What?
Yeah,
That's like the ironic and moronic thing I had ever heard was get the hokey pokey and you can have a couple of donuts. I'm like, what?
yeah. I should never offer donuts. I mean, there are people who would benefit, like people that have high risk, and I've seen the benefit, like not dying and less risk of hospitalization. But for the most part, without the right lifestyle, this is just Band-Aid. It's not gonna fix anything.
I'll, I'll tell you what would have got me to take it is if they offered a box of steaks. They said, if you get the hokey pokey, we'll send you like a month's supply of steaks. I'd be like, mm, mm, that's very tempting.
Or have something that works better, maybe for some people, because
Yeah,
I mean, we
exactly.
kept seeing them. I mean, I think it's case by case, but for most people, getting the vaccine doesn't make them immune from getting complications, as we've known. I mean, everybody got COVID despite the vaccines. Yes, they're less sick and less complicated,
Yes.
but it's just not simple. It's not that simple.
Say hokey pokey or they will knock me off of here. So,
I'm sure
but
they
yeah,
got that also on the algorithm.
yeah. So, I mean, and it's a shame we didn't really hear a lot of things to do prophylactically through that whole thing. I just, knowing what I knew about health, started high dosing vitamin D in March of 2020. And I did for a little while, I was doing about 25 to 30,000 IU a day just to kind of like build it up in my system. And I had pretty good vitamin D already. Then it got sunny and I was out in the sun and doing the sun exposure and in the cold baths and all the things. And I've never gotten it yet, and I haven't gotten any of the hokey pokeys or anything. I feel great. I've been out and about. I don't really wear anything over my mouth. And I don't live in fear, I guess is a big thing too. And it's very helpful. Like how easy would that have been from a public health perspective, from your medical perspective? How easy would that have been to say all these things that were obvious?
It's very easy. You just have to say it. But I don't know if it's lack of knowledge or really, I don't know. I don't know. People who make the policies don't understand the science or medicine, or people who are giving the advice. Maybe they're doing their best at the time, but whatever the US does, the rest of the world follows. And then we started right when we said, you got to take care of your health, but that quickly changed to you got to hide, and everybody gained 20 pounds. So if everybody lost 20 pounds on average, we wouldn't have had that mess during that time frame. I mean, that could have been easy, but I don't know.
Yeah. When they closed down the parks and the beaches and the gyms and all these places where people could get fun, physical activity, fresh air, it seemed so weird, because I was like, wow, if we could do the opposite of all the right things, what would we do? Yeah, let's recommend that. So,
Yeah,
and it's really sad.
it is very sad. It's very sad.
But thankfully, we're at the end of it being a pandemic and more into an endemic now. And so that's good news. I think people are ready to be back to some sense of normal. But now it's an opportunity. You've got all these people that went, what was that blur the last 2 years? I need to get my health in order, no matter what age they are. And I would think people around my age, I'm 50, we're very attentive to it now. Maybe 20, 30, they're like, I'll survive. But definitely 40 and above, I think this, hopefully, I'm hoping, has woken people up to, hey, I need to get my health house in order.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just have to remember that the number 2 top cause of death is heart disease and cancer. And all of these things a lot of them is lifestyle related. Yes, people are dying from the virus, but the people who are dying from the virus also have a lot of medical issues. There's no escaping from it. I mean, everybody eventually will get. I got it actually a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's just no escape. It's just all you can control is your health. You can't control whether you get it or not. So you got to take care of your health to avoid all the complications.
Yes, make your vessel as healthy as possible.
Yes.
Yes. So so you've got this coaching that you're doing now. Have you planned on writing a book? Have you planned on doing a podcast? Like I see people post your little sayings. I see these all over people's stories now. Like you're really penetrating and you're growing so fast. What's the hope and dream?
I think the books have been written. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. All the good, better writers out there. I speak kind of, when I type these things, I'm just kind of on the impromptu in the morning when I kind of have a thought and I just put it out there. I think people connect with it because it's real. It's more vulnerable. I just talk. I don't try to get too fancy. I try to simplify concepts. I don't know. I don't right now. I'm not thinking about podcasts or books. I just want to help people change their life. Empower them.
Let me make the case for you. So before I was a podcaster, I was a blogger. Podcasting changes everything, and people are getting to see you on camera and hear your voice today. I have people that come up to me at conferences and they like hear my voice, Jimmy Moore, and they want to come,
Yeah.
connect me. There is a connectivity there. So if not podcasting, maybe some videos on Instagram,
Right.
or like that would be one. And then the whole idea of a book, not that you need this because your MD after your name is your legitimacy, but it gives you a certain moxie of, hey, I'm published author, and I can certainly help you if you had aspirations for that. We can talk off the air, but I feel like you have a really unique perspective as one of the few doctors who now understands this nutritional component. And you could almost write something like a primer for doctors wanting to learn more about nutrition and metabolism, that as an adjunct to their medical allopathic traditional care. That could be a role that you play that would be so powerful that I'm not really seeing anybody do.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. I think it's just the idea and the thought as seems overwhelming for me. I'm not as a writer because I write like comments, but I haven't never blogged. But you're right about video and all that stuff.
Do you know anybody in your life that's a writer? e-bike, written any books at all. Let's
Yes,
see.
yes.
Happy to help.
They're great books, by the way. Everybody should read them.
Thank you. But yes, I feel like there's so many people that are talented like yourself that you leave all that knowledge and experience on the table. And I feel like, especially at this time in our world, where people are seeking out, how can I be the best version of me I can be from a health perspective? We need voices like yours. We need more resources from people like you. And plus, you would reach more than the few people that might hire you as a coach. So
Right,
think about
right.
it. I'm here if you
Definitely.
decide to.
Absolutely. It's gonna
Yes.
evolve, I'm sure. I'm not gonna be the same indefinitely.
So, guys, that's Dr. Elie Jarrouge. Go follow him over on Instagram, Elie_Jarrouge, again spelled ELIE_JARROUGE. His website, metabolichealthmd.com/contact if you want to hire him. Are you ready? Partnering with me, blah, blah, blah. So go check out the Metabolic Health MD website, and I'm sure that Elie would be happy to help you. Well, you were just as much of a delight as I thought you would be. So thank
Thank
you
you,
for.
Jimmy. It's always fun to watch your videos and reels and posts. So everybody should follow you too.
And freezing my tushy off in an ice bath. Do you do any ice baths or anything like that?
No, I'm still haven't gotten myself to do that. I can jump in a cold pool, but I haven't done ice bath yet. Everybody's telling me to do that, but
Let's see. We need to get him to jump into an ice bath, start a podcast, write a book, go on a speaking.
No
I'm like,
pressure.
I'm planning your
Yeah,
future.
no pressure, no pressure.
Well, Elie, thank you again.
Thank you.
Time to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com. Woo!
Are you tired of playing the mask game? Me too. That's why I wanted to tell you about the Unmask. This is a breathable, completely breathable. It covers, you can't even see that it's breathable, but it's breathable. Whether you're going on a plane, having to go into a store and wearing this thing, playthemaskgame.com is how you can get this mask. They come in all kinds of colors and everything. In fact, right there, you can see right through it what it is, but when you're wearing it, it does not look like it's anything different, but it's breathable, baby. Playthemaskgame.com.
Have you experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low-carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active, or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.